So, what was all this stuff about people coming back to life?
Nothing. It's just an old ghost story.
You're listening to Fun with Horror with your hosts, Scotty and Andrew.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 111 of Fun with Horror. And as people might know, Andrew is supremely busy right now. He's got a lot going on, so we're giving Andrew a little bit more of a break. So once again, I am joined by our very good friend Stanley of the Gory Gays podcast, and we are going to be talking about Pet Sematary 2 from 1992. Continuing our Pet Sematary series of reviews and podcasts. And how are you, Stanley?
I am very, very well, sir. Thank you so much for asking. How are you?
I'm good, actually. I'm pretty good for January.
Yeah, you know what? I'm actually sick. I'm not going to lie.
You don't sound sick at all.
That's very nice of you. So I'm actually doing much better than I could be doing given. So happy to be here. This is taking my mind off of it in all the good ways. Yeah.
I love it. And
me too.
We love you, and thank you again, obviously, for coming back.
Yeah, man, you have to come back for this. Are you kidding?
And we're gonna have like 2 more episodes in sometime in the future where we do Pet Sematary the remake and Pet Sematary Bloodlines.
This movie series is not talked about enough, in my opinion. So any chance to talk about any movie within this franchise is a solid opportunity. So thank you.
Of course. Before we get to it, though, how are the Gory Gays doing?
Oh, we are doing wonderful, as far as I know. Yeah.
Yeah, you just did one of my favorite movies, Christine, last week.
And you know, that was actually your fault because you had given me that vinyl a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, that was a fun movie to talk about. But we are going to be talking about Incident in a Ghostland in a couple of
well, actually,
soon.
That's yesterday.
Actually,
it was released yesterday.
Thank you. Good call. Yes, that's the most recent review.
Nice. I've never heard of that movie, so
yeah. Well, you've heard of Martyrs, right?
The French Extreme.
Yeah. It's the same director.
Oh,
yeah. More recent though. I think it came out in 2017 or 16. One of the other.
Is it kind of extreme?
It's a little bit more tame than Martyrs. We were thinking about talking about Martyrs, and then somehow we watched that instead. And then I was like, you know what? I feel like this might be a little bit easier to talk about as opposed to, I don't know. Martyrs was a little bit harder to sit through. I've only seen Martyrs once, and Alex had never seen it before. So I don't know. This one just seems a little bit easier to talk about.
Was he okay?
Somehow. I don't know. I feel like I came out of it a little bit more scathed than he did. I don't know.
I'll never forget when I watched Martyrs the first time because it was very extremely hard to watch. It was so hard to watch. It's so brutal. But when the movie ended, I thought that it was brilliant and I couldn't stop thinking about it. My good buddy Andrew, he came over one day and we watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Martyrs. We've talked about it before on the podcast. It's a very famous day of ours where it was just such a bleak, depressing day of movies.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a fun a fun time with horror.
Yeah. Well, but it's so weird, even though it was what it was. And Andrew always talks about how he left with such an empty feeling. You think back and it was a fun day. It's a day that you remember, it was the first time he'd ever seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay.
And I got to watch Martyrs again, realizing that I can sit through this movie again.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how I looked at it with Martyrs as well, because that was only the second time I had ever seen it. And there was a lot that I must have blocked out because it was a much different experience this second time around than I remember. I mean, the first time I saw it, I think was when it had come out. I don't think.
So you have seen it twice?
This was the second time.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, this was the second time. And I think it was just one of those movies I wanted to watch specifically for Alex's reaction. It was one of those. I wanted to see like how he reacted to certain parts, but then there were parts that I just had completely forgotten about, you know. So it was it was a grim experience. But pairing that with something like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Was it the original that you watched or was it the remake? Yeah.
The original.
Either or. Yeah, that's a I don't know.
Well, if I had known ahead of time, we would have watched Martyrs and Inside.
Which it's funny because I have the Martyrs DVD, which I don't know why you want to own something like this. It's not.
I own it on Apple. I own it on iTunes because it is a brilliant movie.
It's very good movie making. Absolutely. As opposed to something like the movie we're about to talk about. I don't know. That's a whole different story. But yeah, it's one of those movies that definitely stick with you. And I didn't take with me the first time a lot that I got out of it this second time. Like I really paid attention to what the actual story was. I didn't realize there was a lot happening by the end of the film. You know, I didn't. Yeah. I did not know. So I don't know where we were going with that.
No, that's perfect. But that is a good segue to talk about this movie that we're talking about today.
Mm-hmm. Ellie Creed was the only one that lived. Then one night, she freaks out. Hacks up the grandparents with an axe. Police found her licking the brains off the blade. Threw her in the psycho ward. All she could say were two words. Pet Sematary.
Welcome back, everybody. So Pet Sematary 2 came out in 1992. It was directed by Mary Lambert, who directed the first Pet Sematary. It stars Edward Furlong, Anthony Edwards, Clancy Brown, Jason McGuire, Jared Rushton, Darlanne Fleugel, Sarah Trigger, and Lisa Waltz. And it was written by Richard Outten. Before we get into this, Stanley, let's just warn everybody that we are going to spoil Pet Sematary 2. So if you haven't seen it, this is your chance to pause the podcast and go watch the movie and then come back and press play. But without further ado, are you ready for this?
I have never been more ready to talk about a movie in my life. You know, I honestly.
We should also say this is the second movie in our Pet Sematary retrospective series that's just happening sporadically. Our last when we did Pet Sematary was our 100th episode, right?
Yes.
So
yeah, I say our like it was our 100th episode. No, I think it was the one before it. It was the one that was like leading right into it. It was the 2-year anniversary.
Thank you.
Right?
Yes,
that's what it
exactly
was.
what it was.
Okay.
Yeah. Our 100th episode was Ginger Snaps, but a few episodes before that last year, I think episode 97 actually was Pet Sematary. So go back, listen to that. Stanley joined both Andrew and myself, and we talked about it. So yeah,
that was the first time I met Andrew.
Yes.
Met.
And that was wonderful. I loved it.
Yes.
But here we go. So we're going to do a new thing here with the 3-minute recap. I've got my virtual 10-sided die called up on the computer, and I'm going to roll it. Stanley, go ahead and pick odd or even right now.
Oh, God. Odd.
Okay, so if it's odd, you get to do the 3-minute recap. If it's even, I get to do it. So here we go.
Okay.
You can't see it, but it is a 7.
Okay.
So you're doing it, Stanley.
Oh, so it does mean I'm doing it. Shit.
Yeah, it means you're doing it.
All right. You know what? I got this. All right.
Yeah, whenever you're ready, go for it, buddy.
I got you for 3 minutes. 3 minutes of playtime.
All right. So, Pet Sematary 2, we have an actress named Renee Hallow, and she is on the set of a horror movie, and she has a son named Jeff, who is played by Edward Furlong. And he is on the set with her, and she dies in a freak accident. She's electrocuted on set. So Jeff is sent to live with his dad, Chase Matthews, who is a veterinarian. And they go to Maine, where they have a summer home, apparently. Chase is going to open up a vet clinic. because, like I said, he is a veterinarian. The town is headed by a sheriff named Gus, who is played by Clancy Brown. He admits at one point that he used to have a relationship with Renee, but that is far and few between. He has a stepson named Drew, who was an overweight kid. He is the same age as Jeff, and they become friends pretty quickly. Drew has a dog named Zowie, and we learn very quickly that Gus, Drew's stepdad, is a piece of shit. Gus is married to Amanda, who is Drew's stepmom. A very pivotal moment is when Gus shoots Zowie for trying to get at his rabbits or something, and it's really horrific. Drew gets Jeff to help him bury the dog in the burial ground beyond the pet cemetery, which I forgot to mention we are introduced to by the bullies at one point or another, but we can get to that later because it involves kitten stealing and something that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Anyway, so Zowie comes back to life because this is a pet cemetery film, and Drew gets grounded for lying to his parents. Then we get to Halloween, and Drew and Jeff go to the pet cemetery for some teenage boy shenanigans. And Gus goes to find Drew because Amanda was covering for him. Gus ends up getting killed by Zowie, and Jeff and Drew have to bury Gus in the pet cemetery. And then the second half is kind of interesting, and we get like an incorporated like family scenario where Gus is getting incorporated back into the family, and he is like the stepdad that Drew always wanted, but it doesn't last very long, and we get this weird dream sequence. There's like a bunch of dream sequences actually where Chase and Jeff are both being haunted by visions of Renee, but she has Zowie's head. And it's really, really interesting. And there's a lot of fluorescent lighting. Eventually, Gus snaps and he kills both Amanda and Drew by driving them into a potato truck. Gus kills the lead bully, Clyde, and eventually digs up Renee's corpse. And he and Jeff bury Renee in the pet cemetery. She comes back, and there's this big, weird showdown in the attic of the summer home. And there's a lot of fire. And yeah, this is a pet cemetery movie, and it doesn't really feel like a pet cemetery movie, but it is, and it's a lot of fun, and that's it.
There you go.
Another wonderful 3-minute recap, maybe.
You came in just under 3 minutes.
Sure.
So you will not be killed and taken to a pet cemetery today. So
I don't know.
All right. So you told me before we actually even both watched this or rewatched it, you told me that, funny enough, you have actually seen Pet Sematary 2 more times than Pet Sematary 1.
It's true.
So tell me, like, maybe your history with this movie and what you think of it ultimately.
Well, I think to piggyback off of that, I've seen it more than Pet Sematary 1 because Pet Sematary 1 was so scary to me as a child. I think it scarred me so much. And I wanted to like Pet Sematary 1 at the same time. I wanted to really love it for some reason. Maybe because I loved horror movies so much, or maybe because I wanted to impress my stepdad. I'm not entirely sure. It's very deep-rooted. I didn't really find Pet Sematary 2 as scary, and I was able to sit through it. And there were also a lot of weird correlating moments, especially as a kid growing up watching it, to where watching it was just a little bit easier, I guess. I just found myself watching it a lot more. That didn't mean I enjoyed it more necessarily, but it just ended up becoming background fodder when I was able to finally sit through Pet Sematary, the first Pet Sematary, as a teenager. That ended up dwindling a little bit more. But the first Pet Sematary is not a movie you sit down for and watch for enjoyment, you know? And I think that Pet Sematary 2 is. Like, this is a movie you watch and you kind of have to laugh at. But also, in an unfortunate slight, it sucks because it's also a Pet Sematary movie because it kind of insults the original. But
yeah. Now, you let me borrow the Blu-ray, and we'll get into it. But have you watched all of the bonus features on the Blu-ray?
I did when I originally bought it, which was a couple of years ago. But yeah,
cool.
Yeah,
cool. Awesome. So, what do you think of the movie, though? Like,
I really like it. Watching it now as an adult, I think it's more of an interesting take of I think it's more of a coming of age story, you know, like between like two boys growing up. Like, I think it's an interesting take on death. Like, I think both movies are, but I think this one more so is like an interesting take on two teenage boys dealing with death, like in different ways. So if you look at it through that kind of lens, and you kind of take like the camp and the stupidity out of it, because let's be real, it's a fucking stupid movie. Like, this movie is not written with the intention to win Academy Awards.
Right.
But if you take all that aside, it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun and entertaining. There's a lot of entertainment value to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me paint a little picture for you, Stanley.
Sure.
Full disclosure, you're a bit younger than me.
Yeah.
In 1992, I had just moved to Los Angeles. Okay, so picture a young Scotty, just moved to Los Angeles, 1992. I think I moved here in April. I was the receptionist at a sound studio in Hollywood, and one of the movies that they were working on very first was Pet Sematary 2. And I was, grew up a huge Stephen King fan, huge fan of the first movie. It was such a huge thrill that of all the movies that they were working on when I first started working there was Pet Sematary 2.
I would have died.
Mary Lambert was the kindest person. I don't remember meeting a lot of the other people. I remember meeting Mary, and she was super kind. And I know that I told her at the time how big a fan I was of the first movie, and I was probably a little bit just enamored with her because she had directed one of my favorite horror movies of all time.
Sure.
And then after they're finished with the movie, they're finished doing the sound mix, they have a cast and crew screening over at Raleigh Studios, and guess who gets an invite?
Oh my God, Scotty, how did I not know any of this?
Because
Were you saving this?
I was saving this for the podcast.
I'm literally dead right now. Okay.
I'm sure that I saw Edward Furlong. I'm sure Clancy was there. I'm sure Jason McGuire was there. I'm sure they were all there. I don't remember. All I remember is Mary.
Yeah.
Because she was so good to me.
Yeah.
But it was such a thrill to go to this cast and crew screening and to be among all these people that made this movie. And obviously back then, because of that, I had rose-tinted glasses on. And I think I loved the movie back then, but I don't think I watched it too many times until last week when I started watching it for this episode.
Yeah.
And I got to say, I see the faults with this movie. It's a little bit harder for me to sit through the entire thing now.
Yeah, it's like, for instance, I watched it this morning, and I did feel its running time this morning. And
Yes.
I noticed a few things, I mean, which quite obviously there are more than a few things. I noticed a few things that, from a critic's standpoint, did not quite add up. You know, I
Right.
watched this movie for many different reasons, as opposed to the next person. There are quite a few things that just do not make a lick of freaking sense, you know? So from a person who wants a companion piece to Pet Sematary 1, this is not the movie for you. You know, it's in the wrong series. Like, this is a movie that I'm not sure if it was taking itself seriously. I think at one point, up until a certain point, it might have been. I think up until a certain point in the film, it really was trying to be a Pet Sematary movie. And then someone was like, you know what? Fuck it. And they flipped a switch and they're like, let's let Clancy Brown do whatever he wants and let's see what happens. And that kind of works for a certain audience, but then there are other people who were like, what were you guys doing? Why did you do that? Because that's really where the biggest mistake in the film lies, is letting Clancy Brown, which, I mean, it's the writers at the end of the day. And do I think that that's where the mistake is? Not necessarily, but that's where a lot of people would, as Pet Sematary fans, would think it goes awry.
See, now as a fan, I don't think that's the problem. I
No?
don't think that, I actually wrote in my notes that I think Clancy Brown and his portrayal of Gus is the shining highlight of the movie.
And see, I like it too. And it's funny because, not to like get into a 2019 Pet Sematary tirade, but
Right.
that's kind of the direction that movie went as well. And I thought that was funny because that movie kind of got crapped on a lot, but they kind of took a lot from Pet Sematary 2, if you look at it. Like,
which we'll talk about. We'll talk about later when we get to that movie. But
yeah.
I don't know.
I love Gus. I love Gus a lot. I think he's funny. I think it kind of, the camp factor, as much as it's not necessary for a movie like this, I think it worked.
Yeah, I mean, I think it worked. So, as you might remember, Mary talked about this on the commentary for the movie. And
Yeah.
before we go any further, I just want to give a huge shout out to our friend Justin Beam with Reverend Entertainment. Justin helps put together bonus features on a ton of Blu-rays. A lot of times it's Scream Factory and Shout Factory. The commentary is actually Justin talking with Mary while the movie's playing. He just did such an amazing job in getting the actors that he got and the people to do the different interviews that are on the Blu-ray. Just hats off to Justin. But yeah, Mary talks about how the original idea for Pet Sematary 2 was that it would be Ellie Creed grown up. She's a teenager, and she still wanted it to be a coming of age movie, but she wanted it to be about Ellie.
Yeah.
The producers, however, said that casting or telling a story about a female lead would not make money.
Idiots.
Exactly. And so Mary pivoted to the character of Jeff. We hear somewhere in the movie, during the Pet Sematary campfire scene, what may have happened to Ellie, but we also don't know. It might have just been a campfire story where
Which I think that's a cool story.
I like it to an extent, yes.
Yeah, I mean the urban legend-ish part where they kind of go haywire with it's a little silly, but I would have loved to have gotten an Ellie Creed spinoff. Like this would be a great mini series, or like an elongated television series where each episode kind of focuses on something else. You know what I mean? And this Ellie Creed stuff would be awesome.
I'm torn on it because Stephen King didn't want anything to do with this movie, and it's because he thought Pet Sematary was a good story by itself, and it didn't need any sequels or prequels or anything like that.
Yeah.
Well, let's say sequels, because obviously he kind of changed his mind about a prequel. But
which is funny.
It is funny, and again, something we'll get to in a future episode. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he wanted nothing to do with this movie, and you can absolutely tell. When I watch the movie now, I see the epitome of an early 90s movie.
Okay.
Grunge was just becoming a thing.
Oh, yes.
1991 into 92, grunge was blowing up. At the time, they could not get the big, huge acts like Nirvana or Pearl Jam or Soundgarden. So they did get some lesser-known acts, two of which were very, very welcome, in my opinion. L7
I love
and Jesus and Mary Chain.
Oh, which are the two best songs on the soundtrack.
Absolutely. Easily.
100%. Yes. And they're used so well in the scenes that they're used in. Well,
let's talk about the music real quick, because that's one of the big things. I'm not going to say that the score was bad, because
I really liked it. Yeah.
You really liked it.
I do. I have this on vinyl.
Oh my God. I just ordered it on CD.
Ooh.
So it's on its way to my apartment right now.
I think that when this vinyl came out, it was one of those things where I was like, you know what? I kind of have to have this and it was for that song, that Fading Away song.
Is it on there?
It's on there.
Oh.
And I think that is one of the most beautiful songs. I used to listen to it on YouTube.
Now, let me ask you this. Is that the one that Tracy Lords sings?
No, she has another song. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but that's on there too. Right.
And they got her to sing that other song because I forget the name of the female artist who sings the song you're talking about.
Jan King.
Thank you. Jan King had already sung a song on the soundtrack, so they needed somebody else.
Yeah.
But evidently Jan King does some background vocals during the chorus of the other song. So
yeah, the awesome guitar riff that they use throughout this film, and I think it's more like the theme. Like whenever you see Jeff and Jeff's looking all melancholic and stuff, it's just so good. I think that it's so pretty and so somber, and I don't know, but that's not on there.
Mark Governor is the composer of this score. Right away, I'm going to be disappointed because Elliot Goldenthal, who did the score to the first movie, is unbelievably good. Oh. And Mary wanted a different feel for this movie. She did want it to be more tongue-in-cheek, less serious. However, I don't know if I agree with that direction. I would have rather had a more serious Elliot Goldenthal score instead of this guitar score. However, I do like the guitar score by itself. If I go listen to it, that's why I ordered the soundtrack, because I like the score. I just wish it was in a different movie, maybe.
Yeah, there's a lot of that throughout this movie where I wish that this was in a different film.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a lot of set pieces where I'm like, man, if this wasn't in the Pet Cemetery, or if this wasn't titled Pet Sematary 2, this would work a lot better.
Clancy
Go
Brown
ahead.
says that in the interview. In his
Does he?
interview on the Blu-ray, he says that if you look at this movie, if you take away the convention of the Pet Cemetery and just make it this zombie movie,
Yeah.
it could be its own thing. It doesn't have to be a Pet Cemetery movie.
Yeah, and it's funny because when they incorporate the Creed stuff, that also does work. You know, so when they infuse the Creed stuff to make it the Pet Cemetery universe, like, it's creepy, and it adds a certain element to where it adds that layer to make it Pet Cemetery, but it's still just Pet Cemetery 1 is so cemented. You know, it's really got that stamped thing in horror. And there are movies that get sequels that just don't live up to its predecessor. And this is a movie that could have, had they went in the right direction with it, as you were saying. Like,
I agree with you. I think Pet Cemetery 1 is one of my top 10 of all time.
Mhm.
It's your favorite movie of all time, horror movie. And I think it's a perfect horror movie. Yeah, it's somewhat disappointing, but I can still have fun watching this. But going back to the score, I will say watching it a third time this week, because I watched it once for enjoyment. I watched it a second time with the Mary Lambert, Justin Beam commentary. And then the third time I watched it to take notes.
Yeah.
I gotta say that final sequence in the attic is the hardest for me to get through.
Now,
multiple
why?
times. I don't like the choices that were made in how it's filmed. I don't like the music. The music becomes this, it just starts to sound, I think what I said in my notes is that the music during the final sequence sounds like the action music in a network TV series, a generic cop procedural.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
And I also am never a fan of either camera speed ups or the way that I don't know the term for it, but the way that they shot a lot of the stuff in the final sequence of Pet Sematary 2, where they shoot it at a higher frame rate. They shoot it, or they shoot it in, a lower frame rate. They shoot it in slow motion. And then when they transfer it back to 24 frames per second.
I think I know what you mean. So for instance, the part where Jeff is turning towards the door and Renee says, I love you. And then he turns back and it's got that weird, like, choppiness to it. Is that what you're referring to? Okay.
Exactly.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
And, you know, you can use it in some places and it's fine. I still don't like it, but I can see why you used it in places. But for instance, that exact moment you're talking about, I made a note about, because why do you use it when he's simply turning to his mom and saying, I love you too?
Yeah, there was a lot of things that I caught on this mode. And again, I've seen this movie quite a few times, like more than I've seen many other movies. I noticed a couple things in this attic sequence this time. How on earth was Renee so composed? How on earth was her body not deteriorated? She has been buried for a while. Like, if I was paying attention to the line of events, or I mean more so the time frame, I guess, she had been buried for a minute. So there's no way that her body could have been looking as good as it did, unless there's something that I missed.
I will say this. I thought the same thing, but not as strongly as you. My initial reaction when she showed up is that we are seeing her through Jeff's eyes.
And that was another thing that I caught this time too, because when Jeff is leaving, and this is the first time I've caught this, when Jeff is leaving, sneaking out, when Marjorie's supposed to be watching him after Chase is taken off to go figure out what's going on with Gus and stuff, he sneaks out and we get that beautiful, quote unquote, beautiful transition of him walking through the woods and stuff. And then he comes upon Gus, who, like, points in the direction of the headstone and stuff. Yeah. This is the first time I've noticed that he goes to Renee's headstone and there's, like, grass laid out. And I was like, wait, how is there a headstone there? Like, this is the first time I've ever caught this. There's a headstone there and there's grass. And then he snaps out of it when Gus brings the body to him, and then all of a sudden you're in the Micmac burial ground, and there's no headstone, there's no grass, and I was like, holy shit, this is the first time I've noticed that we're like inside Jeff's head. Like he sees it as a headstone and grass, but
yeah.
Holy hell, like I've seen this movie hundreds of times, and I'm just correlating this. This is wild. So yeah, I never caught that. So why didn't they just give us a little bit of a glimpse of what, per se, Chase is seeing, as opposed to what Jeff is seeing, you know?
Who knows? But as much as I didn't care for that final sequence, I do like the idea that once Jeff starts to really understand what's actually happening, that's when you see her wound. And it opens up and gets a little bit gory.
Yeah, the effects are great.
The effects were really good.
I like the effects a lot.
And jumping to the effects, one thing I'd like to say is that I really appreciate how Mary Lambert handled all of the animal killings and such, because I hadn't seen this movie for a great many years before last week. The only thing, honestly, that I remembered of this movie was Gus skinning the rabbits in front of the house. That's all I remembered. So everything was kind of a big surprise to me again. I was actually nervous because in my older age, I now have much more animal empathy, and harm to animals in movies bothers me so much more now than it used to.
Oh, yeah.
But Mary was very careful. She loved animals too. She was very careful to be sure that no harm came to any animals. And you could tell, when Gus shoots Zowie, you don't see Zowie get shot. You hear a Zowie yelp and it's off screen. And then the next time you see Zowie, he is up against a tree. And then Drew holds Zowie's head and it's, a sad scene, but you know that it's special effects and just red makeup.
I still tear up like a little baby every single time. And it's the music. It's the music that contributes to that particular moment.
Is that where Jan sings?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's always haunted me. I think I saw this movie when I was maybe 7, because I remember seeing the trailers it came out when I was 6, and I remember seeing trailers for it, and I remember my stepdad renting it, and I was not allowed to watch it. So I was watching it from the hallway as they watched it. And I just remember hearing that song, and I remember the sequence of events leading up to it. And so the next day when everybody was gone, I watched the VHS by myself in the living room, and I was like, it's not as bad as everyone's making it seem. But then, of course, I had nightmares that night because I was a child.
God bless you, because I don't have that kind of nostalgia for this movie. I have more nostalgia for the first movie.
Yeah.
When I watch that scene, I think it's really sad until she starts singing. And then I'm just like, oh, this is a beautiful grunge slow song. Okay.
Yeah, it's weird, like how different in tone these movies are.
Yes.
Like the tone of these movies, like each film is just such a different slice of cinema. I wonder what this movie would have been called had it not been a Pet Sematary film.
It is surprising because these two, Pet Sematary 1989 and Pet Sematary 92, Pet Sematary 2, are the most different in tone.
I think so too.
By the same director.
Which is so interesting.
That is crazy.
Which is so interesting. Yeah.
And who, by the way, directed some of the greatest music videos ever made. She directed Madonna.
Agree. She did Like a Prayer.
Yes.
Yeah. And Like a Virgin. I think she did both of those. No, Material Girl.
Yeah, I don't think she did Like a Virgin.
Yeah,
I know she did Like a Prayer.
Yeah, she was a big Madonna music video director. Yeah. And there was also a Julian Sands movie, Siesta, from the early 90s. I saw it when I was a kid because of this. Like, I used to collect those Blockbuster Entertainment Guide with those movie books that tell you like who's in what, who directed what. And they give you like a little blurb, like a TV guide, essentially.
Yeah.
At the end of it, it gives you like a glossary of director and star or whatever. And like I would look up Mary Lambert, what she directed. And it was like 5 or 6 movies. It doesn't give you the entire glossary or index of but Siesta was one of them. So I would go to Blockbuster after this and check out each movie. And of course, I was a child, so I didn't understand anything because they were all very adult-themed films. I couldn't tell you a thing about Siesta.
Oh, wow.
But I know I watched it.
Yeah, I've never even heard of it. So
that's all.
There you have it. Let's get to the thing that I know we both want to talk about. Our boy Eddie Furlong.
Oh, I thought we were going to talk about the dog head.
No, not yet. Not yet. We can certainly talk about that in a moment because
let's talk
the dream
about Eddie
sequences
Furlong.
were a thing. I don't know where you were being that young when this movie came out, but I had seen Terminator 2 in theaters, loved Eddie Furlong in Terminator 2. So I was really thrilled that he was the star of the sequel to my favorite horror movie.
Yeah.
I don't think it bothered me back then. I don't think his performance really fazed me back in the day. Now I can be a little more critical of it.
Yeah.
It's a little rough.
Is it rough in a wooden sense? Like, is it like someone should slap the shit out of this kid and wake him up a little bit? Or like
I
someone
think
someone else should have played him?
initially I thought it was a little bit wooden, but
Mhm.
then I thought that he was trying to portray this really brooding character.
Mhm.
He wasn't giving that broodiness enough life. So
Okay.
now I know you told me to watch the interview with him, and in that interview, Mary doesn't mention this at all in the commentary, but he mentions how at the beginning she needed to snap him out of whatever he was in. He was still dealing with becoming this overnight huge celebrity star.
Yeah.
And so he came into Pet Sematary 2 with a certain kind of attitude, and Mary had to pull him aside and say, I need you to act. I need you to be more. So I don't know what they filmed first. I don't know which scenes those are. But I do think that there are times when he's honestly maybe overacting the broodiness a tiny bit.
Yeah, I think he drops in pretty nicely when he does decide to drop in. I think that there are moments where, like the attic scene, like not so much. But then there are moments where I feel like he's genuinely scared. Like there's the part where in the woods with Clyde and with Gus, when Gus is telling him to get out of here right before he kills Clyde, he has like this look of genuine fright on his face before he runs off. Like every time I see that part, I'm like, holy shit, where is this Edward Furlong throughout the entire movie? Like, I wish that we had this. But then there's times where he's just sweaty.
Yeah.
You know, he's just like a sweaty kid. And it's just another one of those cases where it's like, what would this movie have been like had he, like, I don't know if he was doing drugs. I'm sure, you know, during Brain Scan, I'm very well aware from, you know, directors interviews and stuff like that they think that he was pretty high when he was on the set of that film. So who knows? Like he could have been stoned during this. What a different movie it would have been had he been completely coherent, or had he cared, or, you know, because who knows?
All I can tell you is that watching this movie the last time when I was paying attention and taking notes, I started to feel like I honestly felt that Jason McGuire played a more genuine character as Drew than Edward Furlong played as Jeff.
I feel like that Jason McGuire's character was given a lot more real life things to deal with in the script. And I feel like that his character, I mean, you get the abusive stepfather, you get the mom who's not dealing with it appropriately, you get the fact that he's overweight, you get the dog that just got shot, you get like a whole bunch of stuff jumbled into one. So you have a lot more to work with.
Yeah. I felt like he was the more of the star of the movie.
Yeah, and I kind of
the focal character, not the star, but the focal character until shockingly they kill him and his mom off.
And yeah, I think so too. And I think that it would have been interesting just to get another 10 more minutes with that character and his mom, just to like have like little sidebars with him and his mom to get more relationship stuff, because I wanted to know why Amanda and Gus were together. I wanted to know why Amanda was staying with Gus, knowing how terribly her child was being treated. You know, there was a lot of plot holes as far as like certain character development that we got so much of in the first movie that they just completely left voids in this one.
Well, you can only assume that she was with him because of, you know, the reason that women are afraid to leave men who abuse them.
Well, yeah.
Or who are abusive. The threat of abuse even, you know?
Yeah, they could have touched on that even a little bit more. There's like a lot that they could have touched on that they chose to fill in with the dream sequences instead, that were like they were trying to give us a sexy Anthony Edwards instead of giving us something that we could have genuinely cared about and would have pushed the story further along. But here I am still saying like, oh, I love Pet Sematary too, you know, like.
No, you can love a movie despite its faults. It's fine.
Yeah, but this is the first time actually that I've looked at it from like a critical eye, you know, like when I
Yeah.
watch this movie, I'm just like, and but this is the first time I've ever watched it like, oh, but then I do notice little things like, oh, they are keeping that past at the pet cemetery really perfectly groomed like they do in the book. Like all the kids in town are still keeping that, you know, so I'm noticing weird little things like that. Like as a fan of the novel, that's just little nitpicky stuff that they probably didn't even do on purpose, or did they? You know?
And see, I'm picking up and I'm nitpicking on things like it's obvious that they filmed this movie in a different city or town than they filmed the first movie. Yeah, they filmed the first movie in Maine.
Yeah.
Stephen King said that it's got to be filmed in Maine. This one they filmed in Peachtree, Georgia.
Completely different.
It looks different. It feels different. And I didn't care for that. I didn't care for the fact that when they go into town, it seems like a completely different Ludlow than the town of Ludlow in the first movie.
Yeah.
Even when you see the Creed's house.
Yes. That was like one thing that I do enjoy about this film, though, is when they're doing that cruise through the town. Like when the kitten has been stolen and the bullies are going off on that bike ride. And I do like when they pass the Creed house, because I do like having that little connection, because any exposition that you give me for the Creeds, I just love. And I think that it just provides like a certain kind of creepiness. And I just like having that little connection.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Of course.
Where were you born?
Portland, Oregon.
Portland, Oregon. So that's interesting. I think the problem that I have with it is that I was born in Gulf Breeze, Florida.
Yeah.
Down in the South. Everything, including what you're talking about, the bicycle ride through the town and everything, it felt like the South to me.
Okay.
That's where Georgia is, obviously. It didn't feel like Maine. It felt like the South.
Oh.
And I even felt like the pet cemetery looked way too different.
I 1,000% agree. Like and I feel like that's something that I want to blame Mary Lambert on, because as the director of the first movie and really priding herself on that film, like you should have paid a little bit more attention on just like how the construction of that looked in comparison to the first. Like even today when I was watching it, I was like, you know what? I was looking for the circular configuration of how it looked in comparison to the first one. And I was looking for just like little like hints of the first one. And there's like nothing. There's nothing. Like where the heck, like where was the production designer?
I feel like it was a cheat because they needed it to be a bigger cemetery. If they had kept it as small as the one in the first movie, they wouldn't have had room for the campfire with Clyde and all the other high school kids.
That's true.
The showdown with Gus where Zowie comes out and rips his neck apart.
Which I love that shot. The fire shot where they're surrounded by the fire. I think it's so good. It's
but
good camera work.
Even the Micmac burial grounds, which they never refer to as Micmac.
No, not
even
once.
The burial grounds look different. And
yeah, it looks like
I'm just like why?
An alien sign. Like when they pull back, it looks like they're looking for aliens. You know, it's very interesting. Some of the choices they make are just not fitting.
I don't know. I don't know why they didn't try harder to make it look seamless, like the same area. I mean, how awesome would it have been if they bicycled down the road, they pass in front of the Creed's house, but then the camera shifts and you see across the road a burned down house.
Something like that. See, even with the word Creed on the mailbox, I would have loved it if one of the letters just drooped down. Like, just like little technical things. I've read the PDF script that they were supposed to use, or like the shooting script, I guess is what you would call it. And there's a lot of talk about the Creeds, like even from Marjorie, the housekeeper, who informs Chase about the Creeds. And like it's just little stuff that they should have kept in that just would have made it like all that more interesting. And what I find also kind of interesting is that this movie had a smaller budget than the original. The original made like $50 million in the box office off of an $11 million budget. And this movie was given an $8 million budget. Like, how could the original property have made so much money, but you're going to give the sequel like $3 or $4 million less? And like, if they would have given this just a couple $1 million more, they probably would have been able to do a lot more with it. I suggest you read the original shooting script because there's some fun things missing that they could have done a lot more with, I think, at the end of the day.
I'll look it up for sure. Why didn't they just have And I thought this was what was happening near the beginning of the movie. Why didn't they have Chase and Jeff move into the Creed house?
Exactly. Why are we moving into a summer home that we're not going to utilize? Like, yeah, we like go into the attic, but that's honestly just an homage to the original because everything takes place in the Crandall attic. Like that's well, not in the Crandall, like the top floor of the Crandall house. Like we're just
it was just weird. And going to Marjorie now. What was this character?
You know, I have a funny story about Lisa Waltz. I was working at a restaurant at the Commons before I transitioned into the job I am now. And she came in with two of her kids, and I knew immediately who she was because I'm a fan of these movies.
Oh, wow.
And I brought it up to her immediately because back then I just had no shame and I didn't know any better. And she didn't want to talk about it by title because her children were there. They were very young boys. So she just kept referring to it as PS2. She was very gracious to talk about it. I think she just liked the fact that I had brought up her work. At the end of it, she was like, I have a shooting script for this. I'm going to bring it in for you. I'm going to bring it in. She was a little, she was like a little interesting to speak to.
Okay.
Never saw her again. But she had told me she was going to bring a shooting script of this movie in for me. So, Lisa Waltz, if you ever hear this, you remember to bring me that shooting script. That's all.
She didn't say anything about her character?
No, not really. She said she had a good time on the movie. That was all.
I mean, she was beautiful. She was gorgeous. All the women in this movie, all the lead actresses were amazing.
It was a bigger cast. It was a much bigger cast than the first. Yeah.
But I was just so confused because the moment you see her, she shows up as this young, beautiful housekeeper, caretaker, whatever. You think immediately, oh, new love interest for Chase.
Yeah.
And I feel like when Justin Beam brought up deleted scenes or missing stuff to Mary in the commentary, Mary seemed confused. She's like, oh, why? Does something seem like it was missing? Justin's like, oh, no, and what have you. But I do feel like there was stuff missing with Marjorie because
there is.
There is. Tell me.
In the shooting script, there's more. There's just maybe it wasn't shot, but there's more with her character in the shooting script. Like there's more scenes with Chase. There's more. She's the one who gives background on the Creed stuff. Like she's the one to provide the background of what happened with the Creed murders.
Quick aside, since we're doing a movie about pets and stuff, your dog just crawled into your lap and it's so
there
cute.
He is.
Oh my God. And I want you to know that I angled down my camera so you could see the little donut in the back of my apartment, and Bowie is in that donut.
Yes.
You can't see her, but if she sits up, you'll be able to see her. I wanted you to be able to see pets. Yeah.
No, here we are.
But yeah, like, I don't know. I wrote a note that said something to the effect of, what was her purpose? Was she supposed to be a love interest for Chase, a conflict for Jeff, or was she just a character that would get killed by Renee at the end?
I think that, all the above. Honestly, I think they just needed some sort of filler, and I think they needed to have something for Renee to deflect on at the end. And that's something. My question for you regarding Marjorie, what happened to her face? What exactly happened?
I thought that Renee, because you see Renee's hand pick up a piece of broken mirror.
Yeah.
I just figured she slit her throat and then carved part of her face.
But then you see the glass like shoved in the side of her head.
Yeah, and
right?
then shoved it in the side of her head after she got done carving.
So she just like played with her face a little bit.
Yeah. I say that she got her throat slit. It just kind of looked like it to me. She may not have. She may just have carved her face a little bit and then shoved the thing into her brain, and that's what killed her.
Okay. I will give the movie, it just amps up the camp factor. It really does. It goes full camp near the end. What a different movie Pet Sematary 1 would have been had it chose to do that with Rachel, had it chose to really do that with Gage, And I think
but I'm glad they didn't as much.
Fuck, it would not be the movie that it is. Here it is. Here's the movie that we got because of the choices that we decided to make. Here's the experiment,
But speaking of the interesting camp, when Gus comes back after being buried and he comes back into the house, I was shocked. I did not remember that scene at all because he's in the bathroom looking in the mirror, and I'm sitting there thinking, how is Amanda not looking into the bathroom and seeing him covered in gore? Then he basically comes in and rapes her.
Oh, it's the most atrocious thing. And see, I don't ever really understand rape on film unless it's like entirely appropriate. And this is one of those things where completely inappropriate.
Exactly.
And that's, I guess I answered my own question earlier about how or why Amanda would stay with someone like this. Like, there we go. You know what I mean? Like, if you're getting, if you're getting this kind of treatment on a regular basis, then how do you leave? Type of shit. You know what I mean? Which is,
but
really,
we don't
really
know. We
unfortunate.
have no clue if that's the kind of treatment she was giving or getting from Gus. We know what kind of a person Gus is, though. He's a bully. This
revisit I thought was kind of interesting as well, because the way that they handle Gus is kind of interesting, because you know Gus is going to be the bad guy from the first moment you see him, but they kind of take their time with it. Like, I didn't realize how much time they take until he comes in from watching the rabbits have sex, and then that shot of him coming in the door, the camera zooms in on him, and then he shuts the door, and then it's this looming shot of him, and then it's that counteracting between him and Drew at the dinner table. I was like, man, this is actually kind of scary. This is the stuff that's scary about this movie. It's not even like the stupid gory zombie shit. It's not the Pet Sematary shit. It's like the stepdad shit. Like, it's the abusive stepdad stuff that makes this movie kind of scary.
But funny enough, it seems like he was maybe the nicest person on set, Clancy Brown,
which I remember hearing about in that interview.
And everybody talks about, in the interviews and commentary, everybody talks about the mashed potatoes dinner scene.
Yeah.
How much fun that was to shoot. Mary says that was her favorite scene. I think Jason said that was his favorite scene, and Clancy also reminisced about it. So
I mean, I will say that, as weird of a choice for this movie, that character, the turnaround for this character, like the arc, the Gus arc, that point when he comes home and attacks Drew, and then that whole car chase scene up until they're killed by the potato truck, I think that is the best piece of the movie. Like, he has the best close-ups, like that the song they use. Oh my god, I think it's so well done.
It's also terrifying. Like,
it's scary, right?
I was shocked. Again, not remembering anything but the rabbit skinning moment when Gus and them are on the road and he's like pushing them into the path of the truck. I'm like, wait, what? And then they hit the truck and you see her legs sticking out from the potatoes with blood dripping down. I was like, wait, did they actually just kill both of them? Wait, what?
And, watching it with subtitles this time, because that's my thing these days, is, I think we talked about this recently, the whole subtitle thing with Cinemarink. You learn new things. And right before he throws them into the other truck, into the oncoming truck, he screams, "So long, Drew buddy." And that also kind of sent me on a spiral too, because if you think about it, when these creatures come back, when these dead people come back, they go back to the person who buried them, right? And then they spend their time trying to kill that person. And so he really wasn't coming back to kill Amanda. He was coming back to kill Drew. And then I spent some time thinking about that.
I don't know if that's true, though.
You don't?
Well, think about Zowie.
Zowie was ultimately trying to kill Drew as well, like near the end
but
of
only when Gus was there too. Zowie spent a lot of time with Drew. Zowie also, for whatever reason, went over. Oh no, Zowie went back over to the Matthews residence to be in Chase's bedroom when he's dreaming about his wife with Zowie's head.
Oh God,
I don't know.
It's complicated. It's not even complicated because it just doesn't make any sense. So
I was going to talk about this though.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing I don't care for about this movie, is that even though Pet Sematary is in its essence a zombie story, in a way, it is about the dead coming back, I don't really feel like they were ever treated exactly like zombies. Whereas this movie went further and actually did treat them like zombies. I feel like in Pet Sematary, even when something came back, like for instance, let's just reminisce, and we're going to spoil a tiny bit of Pet Sematary 1989 if you haven't seen it out there.
Shame on you.
Church, okay?
Yeah.
Church is hit by a car. The Pet Sematary, the Micmac burial grounds, actually seem to kind of knit his bones and muscles back together. They don't leave a big gash in him. even Gage, like, yeah, I don't, man, they don't leave. This movie just treats it so differently. If you had a wound in this movie and you come back like Zowie, that festering gunshot wound is still there and isn't healing.
Yeah,
Whereas in the first movie, it seems like the Micmac burial grounds actually kind of knit the body back together.
right.
And then in the first movie, Lewis is just simply able to put Church back to sleep with his medication,
His magic needle. Well, I think that it also has to do with the time between your dying and I mean, there's like rules, you know what I mean? Like, I guess.
I think this movie got rid of those rules, though.
I think it did too, because in the original, in 1989's version with the Timmy Baterman story, he comes back and his motor skills are not there. Like he's slurring, he's like, "Daddy," like he can't like speak full sentences. When
Right.
Gus comes back, he's like, "Where are my keys, Drew? Yo, Drew." Like he's
Yeah.
speaking full sentences. He can walk up the stairs, like kind of.
And he
He's
still has sexual tendencies.
sexually assaulting his wife. Yeah, like he knows to a degree, I guess. Like no, I'm gonna say he knows. He knows. Like the evil part of his brain is fully aware of what he is doing.
Right.
You know, as opposed to previous entries in this franchise where I don't think they do, or it's just not. We don't know as the audience, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. If that makes any sense.
But then in Chase's final showdown with Gus, Chase shoots Gus in the chest.
Yeah.
And it doesn't phase Gus at all. And Gus is not killed until, guess what, when Chase shoots him through the brain.
Yeah, because no brain, no pain, right? But then if you're shot through the brain, how do you die?
I don't feel like that's the case in Pet Sematary 1. I feel like you can kill anything that comes back the same way you would kill anything. There's nothing in Pet Sematary 1 about anybody coming back or Church coming back not having a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Like they smell like death for sure.
Yeah.
But evidently, somewhere in Pet Sematary 1, we didn't get to see it, but Lewis took Church to the local veterinarian. And the veterinarian drew blood and found that the blood was dead.
Oh God, this is actually where the movie starts. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Can we talk about Yolander? Is that his name?
I forget. I don't even know.
Okay. Holy hell. So, you know, he's mentioned in the book, by the way. Yolander is mentioned in the book. He's a vet in Pet Sematary 1. He is who they're taking Church to get neutered.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. So it's interesting that they bring him back in Pet Sematary 2. So there's another connection for us too.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So from what I remember, I'm pretty sure I'm not making this up.
I'm going to look it up after we're done recording. So.
Yeah, Jess. And if I'm wrong, I'll take this shit right out. But
nope, it's staying.
Everybody can come at me. But I do love this scene. I think it's so. I remember seeing this as a kid and having this just freak me out when he throws that whatever he throws, like something at that bird, and that bird comes to life and squawks around and starts flying. Oh God, it scared the shit out of me as a kid.
It's so stupid though, because when Chase walks in, the bird is obviously stuffed. It's like it's just like sitting there like completely still, and it just makes no sense. And Yolander is like this crazy guy. I don't know. But let me ask you this. There's the part, I think, I can't remember exactly which part it is, but after Zowie attacks Chase one of the two times he does it, Chase says, "I hate that dog." God. Does Lewis say, "I hate that cat" about Church in the first movie?
I know he says "fuck off, hairball,"
but does he ever go like, "I hate that cat"?
I want to say he does, but I feel like that's just that Murphy's Law thing happening.
Maybe
is that what it's called?
No, it's not Murphy's Law, because Murphy's Law is that anything bad that can go.
What am I thinking of? Mandela effect. Mandela effect.
Mandela
Sorry.
effect.
Murphy's Law. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. No, I'm sure someone says "I hate that cat" throughout that series. Maybe in the remake he does, but I'm sure someone hates that fucking cat. Let's be real.
Well, now I have to watch Pet Sematary again.
We're gonna have to.
Also, well, the one callback is "The Dead is Better," which I'm torn on, because my first instinct when I hear Renee at the end screaming "Dad is better" is that, oh, you just like shoehorn that in, didn't you?
I mean, they have to correlate it somehow, right?
But then at the same time, I do like the alternate meaning Where in the first movie, Judd says dead is better because maybe you should just leave, whoever died, whether it's your pet or your son, they should stay dead. Don't bring them back. Whereas she's saying being dead is great. Like,
let's have a party.
And coming back is, it's wonderful. Join us.
Scotty, it's funny because I never really looked at it from the perspective as the one that you provided today, with her looking the way that she does because of Jeff seeing her through his own view. And so now it just like, I'm just seeing it in a different way. And I feel like I have to watch it again because now it just kind of changes the ending for me. Like, I don't know, like now it just makes it a little bit more sad. And now I feel like it's more I feel like it's more serious than not,
See, this is where for me, Edward Furlong's acting came into play, or I should say his lack of experience in acting, because everything where he gets, I don't know what you'd call it, evil Jeff, when he wants, he's just under the spell of the Pet Cemetery and wants to bring his mom back. It was just so forced to me.
Yeah.
In fact, I wrote a note. The scene that just gets me every single time is when he's in the rocking chair.
Oh my God. I wrote that in my notes too.
Oh my God.
I literally wrote LOL.
Yeah. It's so weird because on the one hand, yes, LOL. It's such a cheesy, weird moment, acting moment, what have you. But at the same time, it also reminds me of my very number one favorite horror movie of the 80s, Fright Night. Because there's the moment where Jerry is downstairs in his house and a character upstairs screams and Jerry just looks up at the scream and then he just goes like, he makes this face like, ah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Edward Furlong was channeling that moment or if it was just what happened, but that's what he does. He stops rocking and he looks up and then he does this weird little forced smile, and I'm just like, oh God.
Yeah, I don't
know, man.
Like, did he come up with that on his own, or was it a direction? Was that like 12-year-old Furlong? Who would have been an interesting casting choice for this? Or
14, by the way, 14.
Was he 14?
Okay. Yeah, and I think the character's 14 as well.
Okay, I wonder if Brad Renfro was up for this role.
I have no idea.
I think Brad Renfro would have been an interesting choice for them.
But I will tell you behind the scenes that has nothing to do with horror movies.
Yeah.
Well, it's a 6 degrees of separation type thing. But
sure,
when I was working at the sound studio that I talked about, Joel Schumacher was there after doing Batman Forever. And I'm sure that he was in the middle of prepping for Batman and Robin now I can't remember. One of the movies he was prepping for. I'm sure he was talking to different young actors to audition as Robin. And guess who walked in? Joey Lawrence.
Oh my God.
Do you remember Joey?
I covered a Joey Lawrence song on a demo album when I was 18 years old.
That's amazing.
Good. Do I remember Joey Lawrence?
Oh man. He walked in and I was at the reception desk and he's like, "Hi, my name's Joe Lawrence. I'm here to see Joel Schumacher." And I was like, dude, I know who you are, man. You don't have to tell me who you are, but I mean, obviously
he wanted you to know.
He was being polite, but yeah. Later on, when the movie came out, I was like, oh crap, he was there to meet Joel Schumacher to possibly play Robin.
That's what a different movie that would have been.
Obviously, it went to Chris O'Donnell, yes, and
obviously
he did his own take. But back to Pet Sematary 2.
No, let's talk about Batman and Robin.
One character we have not talked about.
Yeah.
Clyde.
Oh,
Clyde
man.
the bully.
No, Jared Rushton.
All of a sudden, the young sweet boy from Big is now the worst bully ever.
He's such an asshole in like every other movie he's in besides Big. Like he was an asshole in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. He was an asshole in Overboard. Like he's like a little jerk in every movie he's in. So this was like a natural progression as far as I'm concerned. Like it only made sense for him to become like this character, but this is like kind of intense. Like this kid's almost homicidal.
I don't know. Maybe he is. I just felt like he did a good job. Sure.
Oh yeah, I think so too. I would have loved to see an interview with this actor grown up, like to see what his experience was like.
They didn't.
Oh, I wonder.
I don't know if it was his portrayal. I feel like it was the way the character was written and all the scenes. It was just a caricature of a bully. It was just so overblown. And then I even hated him coming back at the end as
it
zombie.
doesn't make sense why he would have come back at the end. It's just more like we just need more blood. We need more gore in this movie. Let's amp it up a little bit. It would have made more sense for Gus or even Drew to come back. It would have made more sense for Drew to be the one behind the door to come back and attack. Oh man, now that I'm thinking about that.
But at the same time, I'm sitting there, Gus buried Clyde after he kills him. So then I was sitting there not remembering this movie thinking, what was the purpose of burying Clyde? Where is Clyde? And then he just, bam, he shows up at the attic and it's like, oh,
yeah. Yeah, to kill Jeff. And what I love about that is that Renee's like the one expecting him. Like, oh, here's so that doesn't really add up a lot. But he gets it good though, which I think is a lot of fun. It's
just I just hated his whole inclusion in that scene, I guess. So I didn't really care that he got it good. I'm just like, whatever.
I think that they were the writer, Richard Outten, was really trying to include as much Stephen King fingerprints on this as he could. So he had to include the boys growing up type of thing. He had to include like remnants of, I use this loosely, but Stand By Me. And he had to include like, as much as he could to make this as Stephen Kingy as he could. Maybe it just wasn't something that tested with audiences. Maybe they did kill Clyde, but then they didn't like the ending. I wonder if there was a different ending.
I don't know. I just know. I honestly just think that the final sequence is my least favorite part of the movie.
I want to go back and look at it.
I honestly, when I watched it yesterday to take notes, I kind of just fast forwarded through that scene. I was just like, blink, 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 blink.
The music is so good. I feel like
that good.
Not the action stuff. Like when everything is happening, like full throttle. I know what you mean, like about that cheapish action music. But when she is on, like when she's like full on melting and everything's on fire, I think that it's like, you get that weird like woman's voice, like like that.
And of course, she has to do the Wicked Witch, I'm melting line, and I'm like, oh,
that's
why?
I mean, that's a little, but I feel like that could also be a throwback to the novel because there's that whole third act of Oz the Great and Terrible, the Zelda thing. So I think that could be an homage to Pet Sematary. That's a Stephen King thing.
I don't know if I give this movie that much credit, but
I know
I like that your thought went there. And for everybody that doesn't know, let's just inform people. In the book, the final act of the book is titled Oz the Great and Terrible, and it has to do with, as you mentioned, Zelda and
No, sorry, I just got really excited. Did you catch when, because this is something I caught for the first time this time as well, when Chase is going to the cemetery because he has gotten the phone call that Gus has exhumed Renee's body. Did you catch that when they're walking over the graves, did you catch the Creed headstone?
Yeah, of course.
I never caught that.
It was really big.
What the hell is wrong with me? I'm catching some of like the most obvious things. I was like, that has literally been in front of my face this entire time, and I'm just now seeing it. And I'm like, whose headstone is that? Like, whose could that have been? Couldn't you have just put like Lewis or Rachel's name on there so we know whose headstone it is? You assholes.
They were all there.
Okay.
It was all of them.
Fine.
Rachel and Lewis.
Cool.
My favorite character in this entire movie was Tiger the kitten.
Oh God! What happened to Tiger?
No, Tiger's just downstairs chilling.
Tiger was just hanging out.
Tiger probably burned alive in that house. No, they took Tiger. Was Tiger in the car with them as they're driving away? And the dead character's halo portraits are like shining in the air.
Oh, you know what? I forget. There's a few things I forget about this movie every time I watch it, and that's the fact that the whole Halloween set piece is taking place on Halloween. I always somehow forget that takes place on that day, even though they're all dressed in full costume.
Yeah.
And then the ending, like that is also one part where the faces just pop up, like you just said. But yeah, let's just pretend that if Tiger is not in the car with them, that he made it out safely, because I don't want to live in a world where Tiger didn't make it out okay, because we know that all of his brothers and sisters got eaten by Zowie.
Yeah. So Tiger made it. Tiger was in the car with them.
Tiger definitely made it.
That's what we'll say. Tiger was my favorite character. Every time
I
I
don't
saw,
know who my favorite character was. I'm gonna say Tiger was probably my favorite character too, because he didn't have a lot to say, and I think that he made every point that he needed to make with his eyes. And yeah.
yeah. And also another note I just wanted to exclaim about is that now let me take you further back before 1992, Stanley.
Yeah.
Very young Scotty had this, I think it's metal, actually, this metal Boston Terrier statue painted. I had that in my bedroom as long as I can remember being a kid. When I moved to Los Angeles, the statue stayed there. My dad had it at his house. He used it as a doorstop. He repainted it at one time. And I tell you what, man, it's so special to me because when my dad passed away a few years back, I was asked multiple times, even before he passed away. My dad asked me, "Hey, is there anything here in the house when I eventually go? Is there anything you want?" And he walked me through the house, and I'm like, "I don't want to do this with you, Dad. I don't want to walk through the house and think of your death." But he took me through the house, and I was like, "Honestly, Dad, not really. The only thing I want is that little Boston Terrier statue." So when my dad passed away, I told my stepmom and my stepbrother, everybody, I was like, "That's all I want." And when I went to visit my home in Florida last November, not this past November, but the November before, I went to my stepmom's house and I talked to her and spent some time with her. And I took the statue with me. So now it's sitting on my shelf and it's such a special statue for multiple reasons. It reminds me of my childhood. It reminds me of my dad. Let me just tell you how loud I exclaimed in my living room when all of a sudden the camera goes to the Matthews door, and on the stand next to the door is like 5 or 6 of these little Boston Terrier statues, just all painted somewhat slightly aged and different. I was just like, "Oh my God." And I sent you a picture immediately.
Yeah. I love this. No, I think that that's so cool. I love that this movie can give at least something small/big like that to you. That's like a little message from the cosmics. You know what I mean?
Thank you, Mary Lambert, for putting these Boston Terrier statues. I actually went on Twitter and I thanked her for putting those in the movie, and I don't think she saw it because my Twitter is nobody sees it.
Hey, I see it.
I know you do.
Like, I see it. No, it's funny you say that too, because going back to I will always be grateful to my stepfather for introducing this movie/book to me, and subsequently this film, this Pet Sematary Two. And
I love that.
Yeah, and obviously my stepfather was not like a homicidal zombie sheriff, you know what I mean? But he had a lot of qualities like Gus. He wasn't physically abusive by any means, but he was kind of a tool up until I was a certain age. Yeah, we'll say that. When I turned about 15, like, we became very close up until he died. And so when I watch this movie, I think about him a lot, like, not in terrible ways, but I just chuckle a little bit because I think I look at that scene with him and Drew at the dinner table, and I was kind of a heavy kid, and I look at the conversation and I'm like, like it just kind of makes me smile, because it's like, I don't think of it in like a negative way, but I'm just like, oh, this is just kind of funny. And every time I watch the original film, every time I think of the book, every time I think of these movies, I think of just not being verbally abused as a child, but just like, I just think of my stepdad, you know what I mean? And just like the fact that if it weren't for him, I wouldn't love this movie or these movies, or maybe even horror movies. Who knows? The way that I do. So it's funny that little things like that can remind us of people that we love like that. So I really love that for you.
I love that too. I love that for you. And I love that we have that in common, because I think the same thing about my dad, that I would not love horror movies the way I do if not for him. Watching some horror movies when I was a kid and sitting down and watching Poltergeist with me one day. Of course, I told him this later in life, and he's like, "Well, I'm not happy I did that, but okay."
Yeah.
He's like, because he stopped liking horror movies a long time ago.
Yeah.
When my fandom just went overboard. He definitely wasn't like proud of introducing me to horror movies, but that's whatever. I'm still thankful for that, and for but funny, you did mention that scene between Drew and Gus. And honestly, that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because a lot of it is Jason McGuire's acting.
Yeah.
In that moment, you can see the hurt in his eyes when Gus kind of pokes fun at his weight.
Yeah.
And I also like the way he turns into a little smartass when Drew's like, turn off the TV, and he points the remote control right at Gus's face, or Gus says that to Drew.
Yeah.
And Drew points the remote control at his face. And
then how quickly he recoils though when Gus like kind of leans in close to him and he's like, yo, like stop fucking around. And then he like just nods and he's like, okay, because we don't see it because these are the scenes they're not showing us, like what actually happens when the cameras are not here. And again, that's stuff that we could have been given like 10 more minutes with these characters and it could have made for, I mean, it wasn't the movie they were going for at the end of the day.
I think that would have made the movie even more dark and too dark than they wanted it to be.
Yeah.
So,
and that sucks.
It does suck, but whatever. The movie is what it is. But lastly, I just want to go back to Jason McGuire.
Yeah.
I don't know if you felt this back when you watched all the bonus features, but I felt such a melancholy. First of all, watching Edward Furlong's interview, because obviously we know that he's had a rough life.
Sure.
And, I can't tell if he looks like somebody recovering or somebody still struggling with addiction during that interview. But I can see, his interview is like 20 minutes shorter than everybody else's. So you can see that it's just been rough for him, And
yeah, I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel bad, I don't poke fun at him at all. I just feel bad for the life he's had, and I hope he's back in a better place now. I know he's been in a couple movies recently, and somebody just posted a picture yesterday of him sitting down at a table and eating with Robert Patrick. So
okay, that's really cool.
I don't know if he's doing well, but at least that was nice to see a picture of them too.
Yeah.
But the one that struck me the most was Jason McGuire's interview, because if Jason McGuire was a local young kid who did this movie. He did Pet Sematary 2. It was huge. He's basically one of the leads of the movie. And afterwards, he got called to do a small part in Leap of Faith with Steve Martin.
Right.
And then he also had a small part, I believe, in Forrest Gump.
That was the one, yeah.
But then, as he explains it, his grades in school were suffering, so his parents wanted him to take some time off from acting to focus on his grades. And then he also had this huge growth spurt where he basically spurted up to like 6'2". It was hard for him to get these parts as a young teenager anymore. Yeah, because he looked older than his actual age.
And he was younger than Edward Furlong, right? He was only 12, I think.
Was he? I thought they were about the same age.
Oh, maybe so. Okay.
All I know is they were around the same age, and Jared was 18 because they had to do the on-set schooling, and Jared Rushton didn't.
Did not have to. Yeah.
Edward kind of made a comment about that, like that they were jealous of Jared because he didn't have to do the on-set schooling.
Right.
But yeah, that was the last acting that Jason McGuire ever did.
Yeah.
And as somebody who acted throughout his youth, I was an actor from age 11 to basically right before I moved to LA. And then I stopped. I never acted in LA except for like maybe a couple tiny little things. I felt like this melancholy. I felt that feeling of a life that could have been.
Sure.
And man, it was amazing how just like a 30-minute interview with this guy, and you could see it in his eyes too when he's talking about life after Pet Sematary 2. You could see that he has some sadness too, that he wanted to keep acting, but things just didn't work out that way. I felt that melancholy. It was very interesting. And again, this is why I really appreciate Justin Beam and what he does, bringing these bonus features to these Blu-rays, because the fact that a bonus feature like that can make me feel that way is just amazing.
No, I completely agree. And out of the interviews and the bonus features that are on that DVD, I will completely agree as well that that's the one to I mean, they're all worth watching, but that's the one to really watch because he was the one that I was genuinely most curious about.
Yeah.
Like wondering what, because I mean, you could easily just look his name up and see what he's been doing or see what he's been up to. But I mean, right out of the horse's mouth, you know? I mean, as a struggling actor, like I feel that melancholy every day of my life. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I've been doing this like my entire life. And it's not fun. And it's just one of those things like you have to really love it or you don't. And,
but you're still doing it.
Still doing it.
And I'm proud of you for continuing to try.
That's nice. Every day is a winding road, man. But hey, yeah. I would love for them to make I guess he wouldn't be able to be in it now, but you never know the way they do movies these days. Cemetery 3, cast him as a different character.
Or just cast him in anything. Just
anything.
Put him in any horror movie. I would love to see Jason McGuire come back. I don't know what he never says in the interview what he's doing these days, but yeah, I mean it just hit me. So
yeah. Out of the performances in this film, I would say that everybody does okay with what they're given, but he is someone that they caught at a really pivotal time in their young life to get like a really solid performance out of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. My last question to you, and this is a little more lighthearted.
Yeah.
When you were in high school, Stanley, did kids just stand in front of the high school, maybe even behind a tree and smoke cigarettes?
I mean, I think that if they were going to go smoke anything, it would be pot, and it would be down this alleyway that was outside of the theater. You had to like kind of go out and like you had to like make,
but not on school grounds.
Hell no. There was this short little fat security guard that would waddle his way over to you and like, no, I mean, like you would get in a lot of trouble. Mr. Getty was his name. Rest in peace. Yeah.
Because there's the scene where they fly into the school front yard or whatever, and kids are out and about, and Jared's standing in front of the tree just smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
Clyde, not Jared's the actor, obviously.
Yeah.
Clyde. And it just made me think, I see this a lot in movies where kids are just smoking on school grounds in front of the school where teachers and everybody can see. And I'm like, that never happened in my school.
Yeah, they want us to really get the idea that it is middle school blues, man, that these kids have it rough, that nobody is paying attention to them, even the teachers. Like, you know, they're really trying to set a mood here. And again, Stephen King land. Like,
although I think it's high school.
Is it high school? Oh, they're freshmen.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. Like they would be freshmen if they're 14. But again, this is very notorious Stephen King land. Just kids not getting the actual attention that they're supposed to be getting. And it's a tone.
Well, Stanley, are you ready for 3 questions?
Obviously.
All right.
Who would cross the bridge of death must answer me these questions 3.
Question number 1.
Hit me.
What did you think was the best kill or death in this movie?
I am going to say, and this might be surprising, I would say the potato truck death.
Ooh.
With Amanda and Drew. It's because it was the least gory of the deaths in the movie. And what I really loved about the first movie is that none of the deaths were particularly outlandishly bloody, and they were very effective. And this one, as loud as it was because of the crash and because of everything that coincides with it, it really made its point with that bloody foot just sticking out of the car and that blood just dripping down her ankle. It's just mean, you know, like that whole set piece is just so freaking mean. And it just stays with me every single time I watch it.
Okay. I am going to go with Clyde's death.
Close second.
Because I just love Clancy Brown's performance there. And it's also a mean death where he's getting back at a bully for doing what the bully was doing to somebody else a moment ago. The whole part where he says, "What were you doing?" And Clyde says, "I was just fucking with him, man." And then, you know, as he's bringing the motorcycle wheel down, at the same time he says, "I'm just fucking with you, man." And then it's a whole accident, basically. But then he doesn't stop. He keeps going. The look where he just like looks up and as the bits of flesh and stuff are hitting Gus's face, look on his face, and I thought that was a great death. And then when he
does this, when he smears it down and like kind of does this with his mouth,
when he wipes his face.
Oh
Yeah.
God, it's so good. This movie is it's just really terribly mean. It like and the first one doesn't have that streak to it. It like
Oh,
it's
mean.
yeah,
I thought you
mean.
said it's me.
Oh,
Like,
me
it's
as
you.
well. It's totally me. Yeah, but it's just got like that real it's just grisly, you know? Like the first one
Yeah.
just doesn't it has that really like it's like got that depressing, bleak sadness to it. And this one doesn't have that. They've replaced it with like that gritty, dirty, like Rob Zombie would have directed this in 1992. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? This would have been a Rob
Oh,
Zombie
maybe.
movie in the early 90s.
Maybe. I could see that in a way. Well, question number 2.
Mm.
Did you think Pet Sematary 2 was scary?
No.
Yeah.
It's got some moments where I think they maybe tried for that, but the execution did not succeed.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Number 3. Did you have fun with horror?
So much fun with horror. So much fun with horror. And I think that everyone involved today would agree that they had fun with horror as well, you know?
I can't fully agree with you on that one. I was very curious, as I told you, how I was going to receive this movie so many years later without the rose tinted goggles that I had way back then. Obviously, I saw this movie's faults. I think of the 4 Pet Sematary movies that we will eventually be doing, I hate to say it because I love Mary Lambert so much, but I think this is my least favorite. But
and
hey,
I can understand why. I get it why. You've given me a lot of reasons to understand why this doesn't set well with someone, you know? Like I get it. I totally get it.
Somebody who was a huge fan of the book before he ever saw the first movie. That was me.
Sure.
But at the same time, she also directed my very favorite of the 4 Pet Sematary movies. So
yeah,
it's a nice balance. But
yeah,
so,
and it's weird because I never know if I'm the right person to talk to about these movies because I'm someone who is going to find something really lovely about every single one of them. You know,
Stanley,
like the first one is perfect. Yeah.
Are you human?
I'm human.
And do you have an opinion?
I do.
Then you're the perfect person to talk to about these
That's
movies.
nice of you. I'm all ashamed. Like, do I love this? Like, yeah, like I think that there's something in this for everybody, you know?
Yeah. No, I'm Jesus.
Who needs a
I love
story?
talking to you about movies. So.
That I really love talking to you about movies. So
Yeah.
there we go.
I mean, it shows every time I just come over just to drop something off or something, we end up talking for like half an hour.
Yeah, it's true.
Or more.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But anyway, Stanley, once again, thank you so much for coming back.
Yeah, dude. I'm really excited to talk to you in general. And so to talk to someone about this complete circus of a movie is always a pleasure. And
Yeah.
I feel like this movie needs a little bit more love. I really do.
Yeah. I would agree. I think as any movie, I recommend everybody watch this movie. I never recommend people not watch a movie.
Yeah.
Because obviously, as I've said many times, you could be depriving somebody of what may be their new favorite. So
yeah, and if this is someone's new favorite, then I really want to hear from you. Holy
yeah,
hell.
absolutely. I love movies that I don't care for. I love hearing from people who love that movie because I want to know
100%.
why. And I'm more interested in that than hearing about people that don't like a movie that I love, you know?
Yeah,
100%. It's so weird. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, we are the perfect people to talk to. And you'll be back eventually. I'm not sure when, but next we'll be doing the Pet Sematary remake.
Oh, I'm so pumped.
Stanley, thank you again. Thank you. I love you.
I love you, dude. Thank you for having me. I'm always happy to be here. Thank you so much.
After this
Just
break,
kidding.
Andrew's going to be back with me to let everybody know what we're watching next.
The pathologist, he said that you had a similar incident with the cat.
Krieg cat. That's right. Bastard's name was Church.
Scotty, is that you, old friend?
Andrew, where have you been?
I've been away.
Andrew, have you been smoking 10 packs a day?
I have.
Oh, hi, buddy.
Oh, I'm back. There we go. Hey, how's it going, man?
Everybody, neither of us smoke. So
No.
we're this is why our voices are so clean and clear. But buddy, we're here. We're back.
Yeah.
Because next episode is you and me.
It is.
And it's my turn to pick a movie because the last time one of us picked a movie for you and I to do, it was way back in 2023.
That's right.
Way back in the old days.
Back in those days.
When you picked a Christmas Horror Story. So it's my turn.
Yes.
It was hard to figure out whose turn it was, to be honest.
No, it should be yours. It should absolutely be yours. So I'm excited.
Well, buddy, for our first movie together of 2024.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick something that you're not expecting me to pick.
Okay. Uh-oh. Okay.
Because there's a few movies you have not seen that came out last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not picking a single one of those.
Okay.
I'm picking a movie that I have wanted you to watch for a very long time. And I'm picking Underwater.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I remember that you had wanted me to see this, and I actually have it on my list, but okay. I'm excited.
Ever since we did, I forget which episode it was, way back in the beginning where we talked about what scares us. And you said that you're scared of underwater things, like being deep underwater. That's when I said, oh my God, buddy, have you seen Underwater? And you're like, I haven't. And I love this movie. You may not, but I love this movie. I remember this was a movie that came out at, I think it came out in 2021.
Oh.
No, sorry. This movie came out at the beginning of 2020.
Okay.
In January. It was shelved for a while because I believe, and I'll figure all this out before we talk about it in depth, but I believe it was
Pun
one
intended.
of the Look at you.
I know.
This is why I love you.
I love you.
Anyway, it was one of the movies that 20th Century Fox had made before the Disney acquisition. And Disney shelved it, but then they wanted to get these movies out. You know, they wanted to release these movies, get them out of the way. And it got this really unceremonious release in January of 2020.
Oof. Yeah.
But I loved going to see this movie. I actually really liked it. Now, for whatever reason, I watch it in January. So,
aw, that's sweet though. I love that.
When we got rid of our rule last year, that we could only pick movies we'd never seen, and I was like, oh, I can finally pick Underwater for Andrew to watch. I always said to myself that I wanted to pick it in January at the beginning of the year.
I love it, dude. I'm excited. That's amazing. Well, and if I like it, this may be like a January thing for both of us then. This may be an annual thing.
Underwater January.
Underwater January. Underwear January.
That was my next. I don't know what that means.
I don't know either.
But it's directed by William Eubank.
Okay.
And it stars Kristen Stewart and Vincent Cassel or Cassell. I'm actually not sure how you say it, but I think it's Cassell.
Okay. Interesting. I was not expecting this even a little bit, so I'm really excited. This is awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well, there it is. Underwater.
Nice. Thanks, buddy.
You're welcome. And welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you as always for listening to Fun with Horror, the horror movie review podcast. And this has been Scotty.
And Andrew.
You can find us on social media, all of them. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, all of them. And we love you all. And we hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your January.
Yeah, definitely.
Or 2
we love
weeks
you
until you join us again. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, buddy.
Bye, buddy.
Glub, glub, glub. That's me underwater.
Thank you.